Hello, everyone. This is CJ with OpenAsset. I will give everyone just another 30 seconds or so to join, and then we will go ahead and kick things off. All right. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining, and welcome to the very first episode of OpenAsset's Fireside Chat series. So just as an introduction, we are so grateful to be in a position where we can have conversations every day with our AEC customers of all shapes and sizes, including large global firms with thousands of employees to small firms of 10 or less. And in these conversations, we hear again and again, what solutions have other firms like me, other firms that excel, found to solve these challenges that our firm is facing? So the goal of this series is to hear firsthand from these AEC firms, from OpenAsset customers, how they're solving frequent challenges in the AEC space and hitting personal and company goals. So, while I don't think I will be quite as eloquent as Roosevelt when he delivered his fireside chats over radio in the 1930s, really our hope here is to keep these light, keep these casual and fun and conversational. And of course, with the intention that you, as the folks participating and attending, walk away with some fresh, tangible takeaways after these sessions. So this is the first one. We're super excited. Definitely stay tuned for more coming over the course of the summer and beyond. All right, so I am very excited to be kicking off this series with Chris Smith. Chris is the marketing and content manager at Teeter Projects. See Chris there? Teeter Projects is an architecture and planning company who really focuses and excels on creating spaces that brings people together. So just as a super quick intro of myself, you see there on the right, for those of you who I have not had the pleasure yet of interacting directly with, my name is CJ. I am on the customer success team at OpenAsset. I am originally from Indianapolis, Indiana, here in the US, went to school out in Colorado, and now am back in the Midwest in Madison, Wisconsin. So really, in my role, my day-to-day, what gets me up, what gets me excited about coming to work is helping our customers be successful in their day-to-day roles, whether that's providing training, sharing best practices, or simply connecting folks together like we're doing here today. So with that being said, Chris, I'll kick it over to you just for a super quick intro before we dive in here.
Yeah, thanks so much. And thanks so much for having me. It's an honor to be the inaugural member of this fireside chat. We were just talking, I'm noticing my photo looks so much less fun than yours in contrast. So I do feel very, very buttoned up here. But no, my name is Chris Smith. I, as noted here, do marketing and content things over with the good folks at Teeter Projects. We are a planning and design firm that primarily works as a consultant with venues and arts organizations through the entire life cycle. They may come to us as they're beginning to think about planning a space. We can do feasibility studies, marketing analysis, and say like, yeah, this might be a good fit for you or for your city or for your community, or perhaps no, this is a very saturated market. We think you would make good use to use your dollars elsewhere. And then we're also happy to then do the work of doing the design on the space. We have designed venues all over the world and have been doing so for 65 years. Architectural Digest just released a list of their 8 favorite venues in the globe, and 3 of theirs were ours. Not to brag, but very, very exciting moment. So yeah, that's sort of the scope of our work. And I have been with us for about a year and a half. Just moved to New York. I was at grad school in Oregon before that, and come from a background doing theater, business, arts admin, marketing stuff in the arts and nonprofit sector for a long time before that.
Awesome. Thanks for the intro, Chris. I definitely think that, yeah, absolutely brag away on that accomplishment. That's that's awesome and definitely a testament to your firm. So that's really cool to see. Yeah, and again, I mentioned I'm from Madison here in Wisconsin in the US. Our headquarters, one of our headquarters is out in New York City. I imagine maybe you have had a bit of a, has it been a culture shock for you going from Oregon to New York City, or have you adjusted pretty well?
No, it was seamless going from a college town in Oregon to the very, very small rural. No, you're absolutely right. But it's been a blast. I think being a part of theater projects has made that easier because we're so connected to the arts and culture scene here. Very quickly I was getting to meet people both at small storefront and art spaces, and then we're doing a renovation on a massive Broadway theater right now as well. So sort of that whole spectrum has been welcome, and they're really nice folks. So
Yeah.
I'm adjusting as best I can. But yeah, a bit of a shift.
A bit, yeah. It's always a shift when I go out there and visit. It's always a blast, and yeah, those the being kind of in such a hub where you can see see all those different kinds of designs, as you mentioned, on the spectrum is a really cool place to be in your position. So yeah, cool. All right, so let's just do a quick overview of what we'll be covering today. So as you can see here, we'll start off by chatting through some challenges with the proposal process and some success stories and how Chris and the folks over at Theater Projects have overcome some previous challenges with that proposal process. Next, we'll chat a little bit about managing digital content. So Chris says the marketing and content manager, it's in the title. So much content, we're hearing from a lot of our firms like, hey, we've got just these vast amounts of different content, including project photos and brand assets and videos, et cetera. How do you keep it all organized? How do you ensure folks are using the right content for the right situations? We'll move on to talking a little bit about just data quality and ownership. That's definitely a hot topic that that we come across when speaking with AEC firms. Is again, just like the digital content, got all this information. Maybe we've got different systems or CRM. Maybe we've got some spreadsheets. How do we ensure this data quality, consistency, and ownership when it comes to projects, employees, and digital assets? And then we'll wrap up by talking a little bit about the kind of the hiring and the onboarding process. That's, again, we're trying to pick some hot topics that a lot of folks have shared with us are relevant to them and that are top of mind for them, and certainly hiring good talent and retaining that talent and getting them up to speed quickly in this environment is definitely on that list. So we'll chat through some challenges that Theater Projects has faced, as well as again some ways that that they have overcome those challenges and got folks up to speed faster. So we'll also be sure to leave a couple minutes for questions at the end of our time. If you have any questions as we're going through here, feel free to drop those in to that Q&A button, either at the top or bottom of your screen. Might be able to be on the right or left, I'm not sure, but go ahead and drop those in there. We'll keep an eye on those and then leave a couple of minutes at the end of our time to answer those. And then any specifically relevant, if there's kind of open asset related ones that we're not able to get to, I'll be sure to follow up with you directly after our session. All right, so I'll also, just one last note before diving in, we'll get off this deck and we'll get into the fun part, is I do want to stress that this conversation and this series as a whole really isn't all about just, hey, how are firms using OpenAsset to help them meet their goals? So sure, OpenAsset is a part of this. That being said, we know that our software is just one of many parts of your roles and of your day-to-day. It may be one of, sorry about the puppy there. I got him set up with a Kong, but may have to open the door to let him in here and hang out. One of many pieces of your tech stack, right? You may use 20 or 30 or more applications. So really the topics today and over the course of this series will focus on common challenges that marketers face in their roles and solutions that they've developed to overcome those. So with that being said, let me go ahead and stop the screen share here. Okay, let's see. We'll stop the share. There we go. Sorry, I'm trying to navigate a couple of different tabs. And let's go ahead, Chris, and maybe kick things off just with a an icebreaker. I always like to get things started here with just kind of a casual icebreaker. So would love to pose a question. What are you most excited about? This can be, professional or personal.
Ah, so many things. Always a very excitable person. I'll do a professional and a personal one, I suppose. Personally, I get to go on a trip here in a few weeks. The entire city of New York and my entire office, I feel like, has been away for the summer, and I felt very neglected not getting to travel. And I get to go see my mom, my little sister, sort of up in your way, actually. I'll be in Port Washington, along the river there, or along the lake there. And we'll go look at some lighthouses and probably some art festivals and probably eat entirely too much cheese. And yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. And professionally, I'm excited right now. This summer, we're getting a chance to talk a lot about some expanded services that we're offering at theater projects. Historically, we're a space that really is known nuts and bolts for design and architecture, for building spaces. And we do a lot more, and are getting a chance as we bring in more people to sort of specialize in these areas to talk about that. And that's been fun to kind of branch out the storytelling that I'm doing and the kind of content that we're developing and the ways that we're talking about it as we do more strategic planning on the front end, or we do more. We've just brought in a guy who comes from a vast animations and sculpture and experiential design background, where now we're working with visual artists who are creating giant pieces and work that they're sharing, and getting to talk about that has been a lot of fun. It's a real departure from what we're doing, but I also think it kind of ties neatly into our core services. So yeah, all kinds of good things happening this summer. What about you? What are you excited about?
Yeah, that's awesome to hear about your trip. Certainly, hopefully, no shortage of cheese and maybe a fish fry at a supper club if you're going to be here, especially for Friday. That's kind of the thing to do in Wisconsin. You get a go to a fish fry, and again, preferably at like a supper club. It's one of those things that's hard to define. You know it when you see it if you Google it.
All right.
Fish fry and and definitely some dairy, I think, is in order for your trip. But that's awesome to hear, and excited you'll be able to spend some time with family. My personal thing that I'm excited about actually is along those same lines. Actually, I'll be traveling over to your neck of the woods in New York City over Labor Day weekend with my family, who's kind of all spread out. Again, from Indianapolis, but now I've got a couple siblings, 4 to be exact, and we're kind of all spread out all over. And so we're actually all getting together, which is harder and harder to do as everyone gets older and gets busy and jobs and kids. But we're actually coming out to New York City for the tennis US Open. We've really kind of recently got into it. I was glued to watching Wimbledon, who there's folks dialing in from the UK and London. I imagine may have some fans as well, but it's just such a cool sport. We've all kind of really taken to it over, especially the past year or two. And so that'll be a really exciting experience, A, to spend time with everybody together, and B, just see what a major championship of in a tennis arena looks like. So.
Oh, that's exciting. Well, we can high five midair as we're flying past it.
Yes.
The city, yeah, I mean, it does this so often as it welcomes these incredible communities and has these massive celebrations, but it's really electric during that time. I'm excited you're going to see that. Even like we're in Times Square and pretty far removed from where that's physically taking place, but you totally feel the overlap from that across the whole city. So, good.
Yeah, definitely. And then professionally, at the risk of being a little cliche, honestly, it's this series. This is a little new for us, admittedly. So for those of you that maybe have been with OpenAsset for a long time, I'm just excited to, I think the way, if I can try to make an analogy here, Chris, the way that you really focus on, hey, how can we bring people together and connect people in our spaces? That's really what we're trying to do here, is to be able to share these stories and hear firsthand, again, not just from us at OpenAsset, right? I'm sure you're all sick of hearing from us, but hear from you and others in the AEC industry, how, hey, like, what are those kinds of things that are challenges, and how have you overcome them? How have you identified unique ways? connecting people together. I'm really excited for this series. So we'll see what it looks like as we move forward. There was some talk internally about branding it Tea with Teeter. I think that's a working title. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. May have to run that by our marketing team. But yeah, I'm very excited for this conversation, Chris, and future conversations as well.
Oh man, and congratulations on the launch. It's an exciting piece. Again,
thank you. Cool. All right. Well, without further ado, let's go ahead and kind of dive into it here. So, starting off, Chris, I'll pose that first question. Would love to hear about kind of what's your biggest challenge or a challenge with your proposal process, and maybe how have you found some success, overcoming previous challenges?
Yeah, there are so many.
How to pick one.
I know. I've been staring at a proposal all day, and I'm delighted to be here to share time with you and commune in this way, but mostly I'm just happy not to be staring at InDesign a small window of time. We have problems with proposals that probably are universal. I think some areas that come to mind are the issue of timeline and capacity, and then the place where knowledge is held is something that we've struggled with historically, and I think are figuring out. And by that I mean, for a long time, I think the company was developing proposals, not quite piecemeal, but sort of project managers were tackling them on their own, and they would sort of do this thing, and it wasn't a unified vision from like a marketing brand perspective of, oh yeah, the fonts here look great, the logos look great, this is using images that we approve. It's just sort of like floating out into the ether. And then internally, we hired a proposal manager who's amazing and doing entirely too much work, but he is in a position where he kind of becomes the entire, piece, that entire process. And so he's holding, and not like deliberately gatekeeping information, but it becomes a thing where he's sort of the keeper of all knowledge. And God forbid he take vacation for a period of time, because then all of that can sort of disappear, and we are like, where were these files? What was this P? Where did this language come from? So I think managing that, we're trying to think about more transparent practices throughout that, not only doing like more regular check-ins, but using tools like OpenAsset, which allow us spaces to regulate some of the work that's going out and also have communication visually. I think the album tool for us has been really, really useful. We can go in and I can pull a bunch of images of spaces where, non-theater spaces where experience is happening, or Midwestern spaces that are concert halls between a certain seat size that include people. And then we've got this bank of images to pull from, so that as we're trying to turn around a proposal inside of whatever 48 hours, what people always want them 2 days ago. And so it's a very quick, but we'll have that. And we will have also done the work of templatizing some of these things a little bit. It's a tough balance, certainly, of each piece is a new story that you want to tell, and you want to, articulate what you're doing for a client in a way that's bespoke and original, and also you don't want to reinvent the wheel every time, right? So having InDesign templates for our project sheets and for bio sheets, having, again, this easy access to files that we can drag and drop in. The InDesign integration, this is something that has completely changed my experience with, managing InDesign files. Is always you're relying on this file that's in your file share system somewhere, and if it gets moved or you like edit it in any way, then it disappears. And so, yeah, having those attached to our work and then duplicating, if we reuse a project page or a proposal template, having that saved in there is massively helpful. So yeah, I think that helps us a lot with like the management of information and the timeline, which is always sort of the big thing. But we're doing it, we're accelerating and turning around a good project. I think if I can just get through this one today, by the end of the day, I'll feel better about it.
Hey, I have no doubt you'll get through it. Yeah, crush it. I'm happy that this is really a nice break and a fun break to be able to take and then hit the ground running with it when you come back. Thanks for sharing that. A lot of great pieces in there. A couple of things that stuck out to me, here that I noted down are the kind of just the consistency in the branding. I think actually maybe, your response there and a couple of things you touched on. I was just chatting with another customer and actually with a couple of coworkers about this, is absolutely recognize that, hey, as far as the branding goes, in terms of creating proposals and the like, it's, hey, there's this kind of challenge in these two pieces of having the ability to put out a consistent brand, even from like, hey, we're using the same fonts and it looks and feels the same each time, that consistency to then that customization and understanding that, hey, not just gonna, spin up a proposal template in OpenAsset and it's gonna be totally good to go and ship off, right? Like there will always be that level of customization. You need to tailor the messaging and the like to a specific bid, to a specific client. So that's exciting to hear that, hey, are there areas that typically, you find yourself like doing just again and again and again and copy and pasting? Like what sorts of those things can we standardize, whether it's with OpenAsset or another tool or another process, and then really enable your proposal manager, I think you said, who is just cranking through so much work, like enabling him then and you and the rest of your firm to kind of focus on the strategic high value things that you're good at and you enjoy and you're passionate about, not hunting for the right photos to use and, hey, where did this go, and being an investigator, not the exciting type, but those things that just can be a bit of a drag and and can just, when you've got a deadline looming, can be really stressful. So that's exciting to hear. And I know you and I have chatted about a couple of those ways that you've kind of standardized what can be standardized to leave room for your firm to really focus on those high value tasks.
Definitely. And I think it allows an avenue for a more compassionate workflow. Like I don't want to be in a position where I'm ever like policing brand or getting onto people. There's so many things that go up in the company, and I have only two eyes on which to put all these pieces. And I often see things come back, and I'm like, oh dear, like I wish if I just had 5 minutes to like bump this over and resize it, but it's fine. But giving people access to these tools and allowing them space to do that work on their own, and not making them feel like, okay, well, I'm going to do this wrong and I've got to get it in front of Chris every time I'm doing it. Like we don't want a culture that reflects that. And so, I think OpenAsset and other tools that we use make that hopefully a little bit nicer, a little bit smoother between people, especially working in a remote environment where we're not like bouncing back and forth in the same space. Often it's just through Slack, do you have this thing? Look at this thing. So, but yeah.
Right. That's awesome to hear. Yeah, not perfect. And I'm not sure any system is, when it's talking about is every proposal out using the exact right? Like, that's something that I haven't seen. But if we can, that's great to see you made progress. And I know, historically talking with a lot of folks in kind of marketing positions, just overwhelmed with requests coming in of, hey, can I get this? Hey, can I get that? Hey, has this been approved for use? So I know, of course, you still have those types of things coming in, but that's cool to hear how you've democratized it a little bit too. So, hey, folks can teach a man to fish, if you will, and folks can access some of that too. Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Thanks for running through all that. That's that's great to hear. And that's great feedback. Kind of next up, and this is definitely related, but you manage a lot of digital content for your firm. So again, a big struggle for a lot of firms. I think even outside of AEC firms, right? Like how the heck do we keep all of this organized? Again, make sure that our team is using, for the most part, the right content. They know it's been approved for use. Talked a little bit about that in in just this last part of our conversation, but anything to add specifically kind of on how you, because I know you're the one that's typically uploading content to OpenAsset, and even again outside of OpenAsset, kind of how you keep all that content organized.
Yeah, I think we end up using a few different tools. Maybe my favorite piece of OpenAsset is the permission setting, the red light, yellow light, green light system that it makes my life so much easier, because we've been able to train people to very quickly see this is not something that can go out in a public space. This is an image that we have gathered and we use it for research, or we have maybe communicated with an architect. They share these drawings with us, but we cannot give it to the public or put it on Instagram or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So creating that space to have conversations with people without it taking up my time, but instead just sort of visually is a huge piece of managing and saving time. And I think the ability to work with a community of people who are all incredibly brilliant people in a wide range of ways, but some of them are not from an experience where they spend a lot of time in software, right? Like they are maybe new to the idea of, a platform where they can access all this media. And so having easy keywords, honestly, to like go in and they can just start typing the word catwalk, or they can just start typing the word, hoist. And then suddenly there's this body of images for them to look at. It's huge in terms of like getting their buy-in and getting them excited about, oh, this is a tool that I can use and I can use easily. But also it makes us, as we bring in, I don't know, tens of thousands of photos into this space, to make them useful and not just something that's filling the room, right? So yeah, that's been tremendously useful. And I think also, again, this albums feature, like I feel like we communicate a lot through albums, because again, we're not in the same space often, and I don't have the opportunity to look over somebody's shoulder and thumb through images and be like, yeah, these assets are approved, or these are good, these represent, I think, the story we're trying to tell with this proposal. And instead being able to pull together pieces and bounce back and forth ideas and sort of be talking real time as we're dropping images in, becomes really, really useful. Because the volume is overwhelming and it's easy to get lost in that space and especially when you're like thinking about video and like other types of media, it can quickly get lost if you have to like hold each piece. But instead being able to cleanly search is massive. It's massive.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great to hear. I know just one of typically the biggest time sucks that we hear from marketing professionals is just finding this darn stuff. Like I know it was this perfect photo and like I can't remember where it was or what project it was a part of. So no, you've done a good job of I think what I always try to do is how can we like simplify this, because I totally get what you said, like it can be overwhelming. There's so much content. So I think a good way, that I've found and we like to talk to customers about is from the keywords, like, hey, if you're like, where do we even start with this? It's, you mentioned to kind of keep it simple. Like, how do we talk about our projects and our photos? What are people typically looking for? And let's kind of just take an inventory of that, set it up. We can always expand from there, but as a great starting point, if you try to tag everything under the sun in any possible keyword that anybody could possibly find, it does more harm than good. So I know you and I, for instance, went back and forth on like, hey, this is what our folks are typically looking for. Like being able to search a range of seats would be really helpful to find projects similar to what this bid that we're working on. So setting those kinds of things up, like, hey, what are the most important things that our folks are searching by, can be really helpful. And then on the note of simplicity, I love the access levels too, because it's like green, yellow, red. It's like a stoplight. Folks ask us, hey, can we add more? And, for a lot of things, yes, we can customize it, but for those, it's like, nope, you can, of course, customize what the name of those is, but the whole goal is to like, let's keep this really simple so someone can be like, hey, show me the green light photos for this project. And I know exactly, cool, we're able to use those. We have the copyright, et cetera. We can share those out on a proposal or in an Instagram post. So, and then the albums I love too. For those folks on the call who may not leverage those, think of those kind of as a playlist in Spotify or Apple Music. I use them all the time in my personal life. I used it the other day for summer golf playlist. So it's a way to kind of aggregate and bring together photos and files that could span across all sorts of projects that share certain criteria, and then be able to collaborate, as you mentioned, which can be tricky, especially remotely. So I know that you guys do a good job of leveraging those and again, empowering people with, hey, here's our best content for these situations. It's been approved. Teach a man to fish.
Absolutely. And then the point you make about keywords, I think, is really important too. There's a lot of like, this kind of taps into this idea of bringing people on board, as well as it's a very unique language to our industry. And I, coming from like outside of the architecture, the engineering, even the theatrical consulting world bit, just very quickly like learning a lot of terms. And we hire a wide range of people, and a lot of them aren't even working in like the design and the architectural side of what we do. And so having that space to quickly teach, okay, this is how we talk about these things. This is sort of why we would want to make a shift between specific numbers of seats and a range of seats. Our proposals are coming in and they're often asking for venues between certain years and between certain seat sizes. And so being able to customize that for our workflow specifically becomes really, really handy. And then, yeah, just like learning the culture of this is what a multi-purpose theater means to us internally. Other people may call it one thing, but this is the language we use. And philosophical sharing too. I think like when we, not to get too far ahead, but bringing people in this work, being able to showcase, here's a keyword and this shows you why or how we think about design in certain ways. We want spaces to be intimate and we want audience and the users to be in very close conversation with one another. And here's a way to very quickly show you that in a way that me saying it maybe doesn't do quite as much work as, oh, I see these like tiered boxes and I see this proximity in the way that the rake of the seating happens. And so we are very close in this space and that teaches me something. And oh, this is what a theater project's concert hall looks like. I can use this visual archive to get some insight into, who we are as designers and how we think big about that type of work. So, yeah.
Awesome. I love that. Yeah. I mean, especially marketers in the AEC firm, we're visual people. Seeing something versus, of course, Deltek and your CRM has huge value benefits. And of course, we have the connection there with you, but like reading something versus seeing, oh, I can visualize this now, definitely is a cool thing. And yeah, that's great to hear that that's helped get some people like, oh, okay, I can see what this looks like. I can see how this equates to what this looks like in the real world and how that's helped to kind of get them up to speed, when they're coming on board and learning the culture and learning about your work and the people that they're going to be working with. Awesome. Cool. I think, Chris, let's go ahead and wrap up and then make sure we leave time for just a couple of questions. Again, we've kind of hit on this a little bit throughout the course of this discussion, but kind of this topic of like data, like managing your data. So, we talked a little about like managing assets, how you do that with, some keywords and access levels and albums, with your data, with just so much information available, so many systems and applications being used. Again, making sure that this information, your project information, for example, is up to date. It's there, it exists, is really challenging for a lot of folks. Can you maybe share a little bit how your firm just ensures kind of that data quality and the ownership when it comes to maintaining that data quality and data integrity?
Yeah, definitely. I think you alluded to the Deltek integration earlier, and that piece of having an integration between Deltek Vantage Point, which for us is a space that does a lot of different things. It's kind of a project management software. It's kind of a CRA. It's kind of like just a general bucket for information as we're going project by project. It does a lot of pieces, but primarily it's this first space where we can go as we're, okay, this is the description of the project. Here's the people who are involved. Here's the number of square feet that the venue is going to be. Here's just all of this concrete data. And so having this integration between it and OpenAsset is really helpful as we then, because OpenAsset then becomes the place that people are actually looking for it, right? Like if I'm drawing over pictures from OpenAsset into a proposal, I'm probably not going back to Vantage Point to like find square footage because the information is right there, or the number of the architect that we work with is right there. And I think having that step has been really valuable. And then in turn, when we migrated over to our website, which sort of becomes like the third piece in that, it's another opportunity for us to have an eye on the data, to have somebody, often a different person, sort of thinking about, okay, this is accurate. This is what we did in this project. This, even if I'm not going back and like checking each piece, I'm like, okay, this is this type of venue and it looks like it has 1,600 seats and it's not, a black box in a storefront in Chicago. So that I think creates this layer of QA QC that happens. We also have, we have formal structure in terms of like the way that we review things before anything goes out. We have copy editor on team who, is the last set of eyes on it. I do a graphic review of anything that goes out. And then our project manager, and usually our general manager, will do sort of a nuts and bolts review of like, these prices are right, these data points are correct, and they've been, brought over in a way that is true. But also attached to that is, I think, just a culture of curiosity, maybe of inquiry, and a willingness to like have these conversations with people. I don't think this is correct. Like, can we take a moment and step back and think about this and make sure that the data is good here and not having too much ego about that, So yeah, it's hard. It's always hard. There's too much of it, just like media, but I don't know. In that sense, it's also kind of fun.
Yeah, that's cool to hear. And I like your point about kind of having having that process where you've got the different folks that kind of are specialists and the experts in different areas that together, make up, say, a proposal, and kind of having a process where you review those pieces and kind of just do a QA, QC before it goes out. And I think having a culture where, you leave your egos at the door and aren't, and can say, hey, like, I'm not not totally sure this is right. I know that can definitely be easier said than done. Again, like, also in, I think there's just different challenges now when you're working, remotely, and having those sorts of conversations and feedback, maybe over Slack, maybe in a Zoom call, versus just, hey, Jim, over at the next desk and bouncing something off. It can feel a little more like going out of your way to Slack this person of, hey, versus just a casual kind of conversation. So that's cool to hear that you have maintained that culture there, and hearing about the benefits that that's provided. Yeah, awesome. Cool. We've got a couple minutes left. Just I want to make sure we leave time for a couple of questions. I think we have time for one or two. Chris, the first one that I see here that I think would be relevant. My role in marketing, I often struggle to get project information from our team members. Sorry, I'm not distracted while I'm just trying to keep the slipper away from the dog. Sorry about that. I often struggle to get project information from various team members. Can you share how your firm handles that? Is that something you'd be able to weigh in on?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a real challenge. I think one piece of it, we were just talking about this issue of being remote. One thing that I certainly felt when I started this work, and being in a hybrid modality, we in New York are in the office a handful of days a week, but often are communicating with people distantly. It becomes very difficult when your first conversations that you're having with people are just asking for things back and forth, right? And I think I felt self-conscious about making those demands of people that I didn't know, and in turn got a little prickly when people were just like, I need these things from you, right? And so getting information in a timely and compassionate way, I think we as a company have tried to do that work to build a culture where we're getting to know each other outside of that, structurally building time where we're going to have a beer and talking about things not work related, so that those relationships exist and that process does then become smoother. So yeah, the capacity to think of people as people first, and then like as pieces in the machine that can get you information second, feels really vital. I also think another learning piece for me as I came in was, being able to set deadlines, working with people who are architects and engineers and come from a background where they're very used to having contractual deadlines and moments where they have to have things done. Coming from like the nonprofit art sector, sometimes it's more like, oh, what do we think our priority is today? And, what are the vibes around this project? And instead, these are people who, need that information in front of them, and without being, too difficult and making it feel like I'm imposing something on them, but instead, like, as a kindness, fit this into your schedule. Here's when I need it. Let's have that conversation. I think deadlines have been a huge piece of that. So at least in our industry, people seem to respond to that, and I imagine other people working in architecture and engineering can translate that into their work.
Definitely, this clarity and firmness around that. Yeah, definitely. And I going back actually to what you said in the beginning, what it's worth, I know, as I'm sure a lot of folks will be able to relate to here. It's usually it's, hey, this deadline, I need this by. Usually it's not like, oh, hey, this deadline's a couple weeks out. Can I get this? Oftentimes it's, hey, I need this in like an hour or 12 hours or yeah. So I know that can be tricky. It's it's kind of the way that it goes. I'm guilty of, even again, just a software company asking occasionally with team members for like, I'm so sorry, like, I should have asked you this earlier, but can I get this by end of day? But yeah, that's all great feedback about about that question. So thanks for weighing in on that.
Yeah. Good question.
Cool. All right. Well, I did see a question. Can we see the dog? So yeah, I'll
most importantly,
I'm not gonna be able to lift him for much longer. This is Willie. He's 7 months old. You could probably hear it in his puppy bark. I think he went through his Kong a lot faster than I thought. I thought I had time for this whole webinar, but he's a puppy. He's a lot. It's been a blast though. We recently got through puppy training too, and for those of you that may have gone through something similar, we went out and had a big celebration afterwards. It was not easy. It was a little stressful, but yeah, he's great. So
That's exciting. That's exciting. Deeply
yeah.
jealous. We need to get a Zoom camera at like floor level to
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, won't be able to carry him for much longer. So thought I'd take the opportunity to do that while I can. Well, cool, Chris. This has been awesome. Definitely a lot of good stuff here. Thanks so much for joining, for being on this first one. I always enjoy our conversations. This one was no different. A lot of valuable feedback. I hope some folks were able to learn some new things and walk away with some ideas on how they're able to to improve and make their day-to-day lives easier. So thank you as always for taking the time, Chris. And yeah, I hope you have a good trip with your family here. Let me know if you need any recs. One last thing that I'll mention is old fashions go hand in hand with fish fries. So if that's up your alley, you also have to order it either sweet or sour, and with like bourbon or whiskey. You can't just order an old fashioned. So we can talk more about, make sure you've got the right way to order it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I appreciate that. And I appreciate your time today and inviting me to be a part of this. And yeah, the relationship that OpenAsset creates with its customer, like it's nice we have these conversations a lot. And I don't really have that relationship with a lot of other softwares that I work with. So I'm happy to be a part of it. So.
Awesome. Well, everyone, thank you for joining. We'll be sure to send out a recording of this session. Definitely feel free to to pass that along to any folks on your team that you may that would be inclined to learn a thing or two from this session. Otherwise, don't hesitate to reach out to us. And thanks so much. Have a great rest of the day.
Cool.